Across the distant edges of the Perseid frontier, where trade routes twisted through half-charted space, stories drifted like dust in old cargo holds. Most were harmless tales of wandering beasts, ancient ruins, or strange lights that danced near dying stars. But one story traveled differently. It moved in whispers. It traveled in the quiet corners of starports where even smugglers lowered their voices. It followed diplomats, traders, pirates, and mercenaries alike. They called him the Emberless One. No one knew what the name truly meant. Some claimed it belonged to a ghost, an invisible strategist who could collapse fleets without firing a shot. Others believed it was a myth created by frightened factions at war. But everyone agreed on one thing. Where that name appeared, trouble soon followed. Captain Althira Velshan had heard the whispers before. It was impossible not to. She lived and worked in the same frontier space where stories gained fuel faster than starships did. But unlike most, she did not fear legends. Althira was an explorer, a researcher, and recently, a diplomatic envoy. Her life was built on understanding the unknown. Still, something about this rumor bothered her. Her ship, the Orlan Trace, drifted smoothly along a narrow wormhole lane as she studied a fresh set of intercepted messages. The coded transmissions were shaky and incomplete, but even broken signals told a story. Several alien factions mentioned a single subject, something they wanted to find, something they wanted to avoid, or something they hoped someone else would deal with first. Every message contained the same word: Emberless. Althira narrowed her silver eyes at the data screen. The worry came not from the messages themselves, but the way they were sent. These were not careless merchants or panicked miners. These were established powers, factions normally too proud to hide their fears. This was the first sign that something was wrong. Her ship hummed softly around her, lights reflecting on smooth alloy. The crew moved calmly through the corridors, but she could feel tension tightening the air. They, too, had heard the rumors escalating these last days, but one passenger had not reacted the way she expected. Human technician Jace Rowan, a new hire for the convoy escort, sat quietly at the auxiliary console, hands folded, watching the wormhole's soft bending colors. Humans were expressive, curious, and loud in most social settings. Jace was none of these. He worked silently, spoke only when necessary, and carried an air of gentle calm that felt out of place in a region filled with fear. Althira glanced at him again. His expression didn't change, still relaxed, almost peaceful. "Have you heard any stories about this Emberless name?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Jace tilted his head slightly, as if listening to a faraway sound. Then he smiled, small and polite. "People talk a lot in frontier space," he said. "Most stories aren't real." His tone was light, but something in his eyes was not. Althira studied him closely. He was an average-looking human by most standards, brown hair cut short, sharp eyes, posture straight but not rigid. Yet he carried himself with strange confidence, the kind she saw only in experienced strategists or high-ranking diplomats. But humans were unpredictable. She couldn't assume anything based on posture alone. "Still," she said, turning her chair slightly toward him, "I find it interesting that everyone fears the same legend at the same time. Doesn't that seem unusual?" "It does," Jace agreed softly. "Very unusual." A faint smile touched his lips, but it wasn't amusement, more like someone quietly remembering something. Before she could question further, an alert chimed across the bridge. "Incoming encrypted transmission. Unknown origin." Althira instantly straightened. "Put it on screen." The message appeared as a flickering hologram of shifting symbols. The encryption was complex, too complex for someone to break in less than an hour. Yet before she could order her crew to begin decoding, Jace leaned forward. "It's not hostile," he said calmly. She turned toward him. "You can read that?" "Not exactly," he replied, "but I recognize the structure. It's a warning signal used during old frontier conflicts." Althira frowned. "You've seen this kind of encryption before?" "A few times," he answered, eyes fixed on the symbols. "Long ago." Her suspicion deepened. Most humans in this region were traders, explorers, or free workers. None casually recognized encryption protocols from historic conflicts, unless they had been involved or knew someone who was. Althira watched him carefully as he traced a finger through the shifting hologram. "It says a dangerous entity is approaching," Jace explained. "And multiple factions are preparing to intercept it." "An entity?" she repeated. "Not a ship? Not a fleet?" "Just one," Jace said. There was a quiet certainty in his voice that she could not ignore. The bridge fell into silence. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship and the slow pulse of wormhole light outside the viewing screen. Althira inhaled deeply. "Computer," she said. "Cross-reference known frontier entities with that description." The system processed for several seconds before replying. Result: 1 match. Codename: the Emberless One. Threat level: undetermined. Althira sank back into her chair. So it wasn't just a rumor. Factions were actually responding to something they believed was real. And now her ship was in the middle of its path. She turned once more to the human technician who seemed strangely unfazed. "Jace," she said. "Have you heard this name before?" He paused. For the first time, hesitation flickered across his face. "I've heard it," he admitted quietly. "But stories change depending on who tells them." "How do you mean?" she pressed. He looked at her with calm, steady eyes that now held a weight she hadn't noticed before. "Some say the Emberless One destroys empires," Jace said. "Others say he prevents wars. Some say he appears only when the balance of power shifts too fast. But no one agrees on what he really is." Althira leaned forward. "And what do you think he is?" Jace gave another small smile. This one felt almost sad. "I think," he said softly, "that legends are born when truth becomes too uncomfortable to face." Before she could respond, the ship's sensors blared again. "New signal detected. Multiple sources. Factions approaching." The bridge lights dimmed as tactical overlays painted the starfield around them with markers 3, 4, 5 approaching signatures. All from different factions. All converging on the same point. The wormhole lane they were traveling through. Althira felt her heart rate rise. She had seen conflicts begin this way, with too many suspicious forces in one place. But this was worse. They weren't chasing each other. They were hunting something. "Why are they all coming here?" one crew member whispered. Jace quietly looked at the displays, his expression unreadable. Althira stood. Her voice became firm, commanding. "Activate full defensive protocols," she ordered. "And prepare for diplomatic communication. We cannot allow this to escalate." Her crew rushed into action. But Jace did not move. He simply watched the incoming markers with a quiet, strange familiarity. As if he had seen this pattern many times before. As if he already knew exactly why every faction was converging here. Slowly, Althira's gaze drifted to him again. A chill ran through her. Because for the first time since meeting him, she wondered if the human technician she hired so casually was truly what he claimed to be. And a thought formed in her mind, one she immediately dismissed. Because it felt impossible. But the thought came anyway. What if the one they feared was standing right beside her? The Orlan trace drifted out of the wormhole lane and into open space. But instead of calm starlight, the crew faced a growing web of signals. Different factions, some who normally avoided each other, were taking positions around the region. No one fired. But every ship arrived with clear intention. They were hunting something, or someone, and they wanted to find it first. Althira Velshan stood at the center of the bridge, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her. She was a diplomat, not a soldier. Her work involved careful discussions, not evading multi-faction tension. Yet here she was, guiding her crew through a situation that could ignite a misunderstanding at any moment. Her silver eyes drifted toward Jace Rowan again. The human technician sat quietly, fingers lightly touching the small data pad on his lap. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed for someone surrounded by fearful factions. Humans were known for their strange calm under pressure. But something about Jace's calm was different, like he already knew what was coming. "Report positions," Althira said. Her sensor officer pointed at the holographic map. A Zirin patrol to the far left. 2 Kavar diplomat escorts on the right. A drifting pair of Cernak scouts above us. And a long-range observer from the Asterion Customs Bureau. Althira frowned. Those groups never cooperate. Exactly, Captain, the officer replied. But today they are acting like they share the same goal. The Emberless One, Althea muttered. A moment of silence stretched across the bridge. No one has hailed us yet? She asked. Not yet. Althea almost wished one of them would hail. At least then she would know their intentions. But the quiet was worse. Quiet meant uncertainty. Uncertainty led to mistakes. Beside her, Jace finally spoke. They're waiting to see who moves first. His voice was soft, but it cut through the tension like a steady compass. Althea turned to him. You sound very sure. I've seen this kind of standoff before. Jace replied, without looking up. Different species. Different names. But same fear. They are not here to fight each other. They're here to prevent something. Or someone, Althea added. Jace gave a small nod. Althea stepped closer. You recognized the warning code earlier. You know this pattern. You understand something we don't. I need you to be honest with me, Jace. He finally looked up, and there was a quiet sadness in his eyes. I'm being honest, he said. But honesty and explanations are not always the same thing. The answer puzzled her and frustrated her, but there was no time to ask more. A sudden alert chimed through the bridge. Incoming transmission. Source: Xeran patrol vessel. Althea straightened. Put it through. The hologram flickered, revealing a Xyran commander with crystalline skin and sharp, bright eyes. Captain Velshan, the commander said. We request verification. Your ship is carrying a human. Correct? Althea's heart tightened. We have several humans on board. Clarify your concern. The commander's tone grew sharper. We seek one specific human. The one factions whisper about. The one who manipulates conflicts with impossible strategy. The one your people call. Althea raised a hand quickly. We do not spread myths here, and we do not hand over innocence based on superstition. Jace watched the exchange with a calm, unreadable expression. The Xyran commander leaned forward. Understand this. We do not wish for conflict. But if the Emberless One is present, we must prevent another frontier incident. That human is dangerous not because of violence, but because he disturbs the balance of our region, Althea said firmly. Unless you have proof, we cannot cooperate with a fear-driven request. The commander hesitated, crystal facets shifting. Then, I advise caution. Other factions are less patient. The transmission ended. The bridge filled with uneasy silence. Althea looked at Jace again. This is getting stranger by the minute. It will get stranger still, Jace replied. Because of you? She asked before she could stop herself. Jace blinked slowly. Because of what they expect from the myth, Althea exhaled. We need clarity. Every faction here thinks you might be the Emberless One. Are you? Jace didn't answer immediately. He stood, walked toward the large viewing window, and gazed at the quiet, star-speckled dark. Captain, he said gently, did you ever consider that a legend might not describe a person correctly? What do you mean? She asked. Jace looked out the window, voice soft. Names grow heavier every time someone repeats them. Stories become larger than truth. After a while, even the person the story is about cannot recognize himself in it. Althea stepped closer. That sounds like regret. He didn't answer. Althea studied his face. There were no signs of fear. No panic. Instead, he looked like someone who had carried a long truth and grown used to its weight. Before she could say anything more, a new alert echoed. Unidentified signal approaching. Speed. Moderate. Signature. Unknown. The sensor officer frowned. It's not any of the known factions. And it's heading directly toward us. Althea's pulse quickened. Show visual. The display shifted to reveal a small, sleek vessel gliding through the dark. It carried no weapons. No faction markings. No threat display, only a soft white light glowing from its underside. Like a beacon, Jace stared at it, expression finally changing. The change was not fear. It was recognition. Althea caught it instantly. You know that ship? He hesitated, but only briefly. Yes. Enrated. I'm send. What is it? A messenger, he said quietly. From who? He gave a slow, tired smile. From people who think they understand me better than they do. The vessel approached until it held a stable position off the Orlin Trace's bow. A single message appeared on the screen. Requesting diplomatic contact. Recipient, Jace Rowan. Althira stared at the message in disbelief. The crew exchanged confused looks. Jace stepped forward calmly. Captain, permission to answer? Althira's throat tightened. Jace, are you involved in something that could endanger us? He turned to her fully, his expression serious and honest. I am involved in many things, he said, but I promise you this. I will not let harm come to your crew. I asked to join your escort team because I wanted to observe the frontier quietly. I did not expect this to happen so soon. So soon? She repeated. You expected something like this eventually? Yes, he said softly. Because myths never sleep for long. Althira took a breath. She should deny the request. She should turn the ship around and retreat from this entire region. She should demand clear answers before letting him speak to anyone. But she also understood something deeper. Whatever Jace was, he was not afraid. And people who were not afraid often knew more than they said. Open a channel, she ordered. The messenger vessel's hologram flickered into existence, an alien with soft, translucent skin and gentle features. It looked more like a scholar than a warrior. Jace Rowan, the being said warmly. It has been a long time. Jace nodded politely. It has. We come with peaceful intent, the messenger continued. But the factions around you are frightened. They believe your presence will shift the balance again. They will not remain patient for long. Althira stepped forward. What do they fear? Not danger, the messenger said. They fear unpredictability. They fear the human mind, the one mind they cannot model with certainty. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Jace sighed. I told you this would happen. You did, the messenger said. But you came here anyway. You always go where tension gathers. Someone has to, Jace replied softly. Althira finally spoke. Tell me the truth. Is he the emberless one? The messenger paused, tilting its head gently. Then it said, He is Jace Rowan. That is the only truth you need. Jace closed his eyes for a moment, as if relieved by the answer. The messenger's tone softened. But understand this, Captain Velshan. When humans display their brilliance, other species do not always know how to react. They call it impossible. They call it dangerous. They give it names like Emberless, Shadowmind, or Stormborn. But the truth is simpler. And what truth is that? Althira asked. The messenger folded its hands. They fear what they cannot predict. And nothing in the galaxy is more unpredictable, more capable of changing the course of events, than a human who thinks differently. Althira felt a chill. Around them, the factions continued to hover like anxious predators. A single human, quiet, calm, and polite, had brought them all here without lifting a finger. And she finally realized, Jace Rowan was not dangerous because of violence. He was dangerous because he was human. For a long moment, the bridge of the Orlin Trace stayed silent after the messenger spoke. It was the kind of silence that came right before a truth changed everything. The glowing ship outside still hovered peacefully, but the tension around them grew heavier by the second. Althira Velshan felt her heartbeat echo in her chest. She had expected many strange things during her work as a diplomatic envoy. But she had never imagined being caught between terrified factions, all because of a single, quiet human standing next to her. She had to understand. Jace, she said firmly, I need clarity, not half-truths. Not hints. Tell me what these factions think you are. Jace Rowan looked at her with calm eyes, the kind that belonged to someone who had faced this conversation many times. He did not rush to answer. Instead, he glanced at the small messenger vessel, then back at the worried crew. Captain, he said softly, before I tell you anything, I need you to promise that you will listen with an open mind. Althira raised her chin. I am a diplomat. That is what I do. He smiled faintly, then turned toward the large window, hands folded behind his back. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, cold, quiet, and honest. When I first came to the frontier, he began, I was a young strategist, assigned to monitor trade disputes. Humans were still new here, still learning how to navigate the politics of alien factions. Most believed we were harmless, unpredictable, but harmless. Althira nodded. Humans were seen as newcomers. Curious, energetic, Jace chuckled softly, and very unprepared. That part was true. The crew listened in silent curiosity. One day, Jace continued, two powerful factions nearly began a war over mining rights. Their fleets faced each other, ready to start something that would have shattered this entire region. Althira leaned forward. You stopped that conflict? That's where the legend began? Jace hesitated. I suggested a plan. A complicated one. Something that required each side to trust the other while believing they had the upper hand. Something only a human would even think of trying. Humans like impossible plans. Althira commented with a faint smile. We do, Jace agreed. Maybe too much. He walked back toward the center of the bridge. The plan worked. The conflict ended without a single ship firing. But afterward, rumors began. They didn't understand how one human mind could create such an unpredictable solution. They decided the plan was not clever, just dangerous. They said no one should be able to influence outcomes that effectively. Althira understood suddenly. That's why they feared you. Jace nodded. I tried to leave the frontier quietly. But the legend grew faster than I could. They said I never used fire in my strategies. Never destroyed anything directly. So they called me the Emberless One. The bridge fell silent. It made sense now. The name that whispered through space, the fearful whispers in dark corners, the sudden arrival of multiple factions. All of it came from a misunderstanding, a myth created by frightened powers who did not know how to predict human creativity. Althira exhaled slowly. You didn't want any of this. No, Jace answered softly. I never wanted to become a symbol. I never wanted to be feared. The messenger ship blinked gently, as if supporting his words. Althira walked around him slowly, studying his expression. If that is true, why did you return? Why come back to the frontier at all? Jace looked at her with honest, tired eyes. Because things are changing again. I sensed it. The alliances here are shifting too quickly. History repeats itself if no one pays attention, and you wanted to stop another crisis. Althira finished for him. Yes, the pieces of the puzzle finally connected in her mind. Jace had not come to hide. He had come to prevent history from making the same mistakes. But the factions were too afraid of what he represented. Before she could speak again, the censor officer shouted, Captain, multiple factions are moving. They're forming a perimeter around us and the messenger vessel. Althira's eyes snapped to the holographic map. Bodies of ships shifted slowly, like predators circling. No one fired, but the intention was clear. They were closing in. The messenger's voice returned through the comms. Their patience is ending. They fear that Jace's presence here means another strategic shift is coming. Jace's expression hardened. They're cornering us because they want answers. They want to see whether I will act. Althira frowned. Act how? Jace turned toward the window again. They expect me to create a plan. My reputation says that whenever tensions rise, I am the one who pushes events into a new direction. They think I came here to manipulate them. And did you? Althira asked quietly. He shook his head. No. But myths do not care about truth. The view outside grew more crowded by the second as ships took positions. Some activated shields. Others prepared communication relays. Althira felt tension ripple across the bridge like a storm. Captain, the censor officer whispered. If they misunderstand anything at all, this could become a full conflict. Althira turned sharply toward Jace. You must speak to them, he exhaled softly. I expected that. She stepped closer. Jace, Whatever you say will decide what happens next. You need to reassure them. I will try, he said. But understand this the moment I speak. They will search for hidden meaning in every word. They do not fear my actions. They fear what they imagine I might do. The messenger chimed in again. He is right. They fear possibility. Jace smiled sadly. Humans are full of possibility. That is what frightens them. Althira placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Then, show them something else. Show them honesty. Jace gave a slow nod. Open a channel, he said. The bridge lights dimmed as the holographic display expanded. One by one, representatives from the different factions appeared: Zyran commanders, Kavar diplomats, Cernak scouts, and more. Their faces carried suspicion, curiosity, and a deep sense of unease. A unified transmission link, something rarely activated, connected them all. Jace stepped forward, standing calmly at the center of the holographic ring. Greetings, he said simply. The factions murmured among themselves. Some lowered their heads, others leaned forward. Everyone knew who he was. You have gathered here because you fear a legend, Jace continued. But I am only Jace Rowan. I came to the frontier to observe, not to influence. A Zyran commander snapped. Your very presence influences things. Jace nodded. Yes, but not because I want it to. It happens because you expect it. Another representative spoke. You stopped a war once. What stops you from doing it again, in a way that harms us? Quote, Jace's voice stayed calm. I did not stop that war with deception. I stopped it because I believed every life mattered. Yours and theirs. Humans do not want empires to fall. We want peace. Exploration. Cooperation. Silence followed. Then he added softly. I am not your enemy. And I am not a symbol. I am a human being, trying to prevent fear from guiding your choices. The factions looked uncertain. The tension shifted lighter, but not gone. Althira held her breath. Jace continued. You fear unpredictability. But unpredictability is not danger. It is growth. It is innovation. It is the reason humans survive. We adapt. We imagine. We hope. Do not fear that. Something subtle changed then. The factions did not relax, but they listened. Even the messenger remained quiet. As if witnessing a moment long overdue, Jace ended with a simple truth. I am not here to change the frontier. I am here to help it avoid mistakes. Let me do that. For the first time since arriving, some of the factions lowered their defensive stances. But not all. One Kavar diplomat narrowed her eyes sharply at him. If you truly do not seek power, she asked, then why do you always appear where conflict begins? And Jace, for once, did not have an immediate answer. He began to speak. But before a single word left his mouth, the ship's alarm screamed. Unidentified vessel approaching fast. A new mark appeared on the holographic map, large, aggressive, and glowing with unknown energy. The messenger's voice trembled. That is not one of ours. And for the first time since arriving on the Orlan trace, Jace Rowan's calm expression faded. Whatever was coming, it was not afraid of him. It was seeking him. The moment the alarm echoed through the Orlan trace, the bridge shifted from tense quiet to sharp alertness. Officers straightened. Screens brightened. And the air itself felt tighter. Outside, the mysterious vessel approached with steady, confident movement, too fast to be casual, too controlled to be a simple mistake. Althira Velshan felt a cold pulse move down her spine. Identify that ship, she ordered. Trying, Captain, the sensor officer replied, fingers flying over the controls. But its signature is not in any known archive. No faction markers, no diplomatic tags, nothing. The vessel moved into view, a sleek, dark shape that seemed to bend light around it. Not aggressive, not openly hostile, but unmistakably intentional. As soon as Jace Rowan saw it, his expression changed completely. For the first time since she met him, Althira saw something unusual in his eyes. Worry. Jace, she said softly. What is that ship? He exhaled slowly. as though he had hoped never to see it again. "A listening vessel," he said. "But not the peaceful kind." The bridge fell silent. Jace continued. "It belongs to a group that studies strategic anomalies. They observe events from the shadows. They analyze minds that are unpredictable. And they have been searching for me ever since the Frontier incident years ago." Althira's pulse quickened. "Why? Do they want to harm you?" "No," Jace said gently. "But they want to control my presence. They think my mind is too disruptive to be left on its own." "That sounds like a prison," Althira said quietly. Jace gave a tired smile. "A polite one." The factions on the holographic communication ring reacted instantly. A Zyran commander leaned forward, glass-like skin trembling with worry. "We know that vessel," the commander said. "It appeared once before, decades ago. It observes crises, and after observing, it interferes." Another representative added, "If it is here for the human, the situation will escalate again. It always escalates when they appear." Althira stepped forward. "Why escalate? What does this ship actually do?" The diplomats exchanged uneasy glances. "They try to force stability," a Cernak scout explained. "But their methods are strange. They remove variables they cannot predict. They believe unpredictability is weakness." Althira stared at the dark vessel. "Unpredictability. Human. It all connected too perfectly. So they think you are a variable," Althira whispered to Jace. "I always have been," Jace answered softly. The unidentified vessel slowed to a stop a short distance from the Oralin trace. Then a message appeared on the screen. "Request. Transfer Jace Rowan for analysis. Non-negotiable." Immediately, every representative in the communication ring stiffened. Even those who feared Jace moments earlier now looked defensive. "We cannot allow this," the Zyran commander said sharply. "If they take him, the balance of the frontier will shift." "He is dangerous to us," another faction leader said. "But he is also part of this region now," the Cernak scout added. "And humans may react unpredictably if one of their own is taken forcibly." Jace quietly watched the reactions: fear, confusion, frustration, all mixed together. Althira turned to him. "We won't hand you over. You're part of my crew. And you haven't done anything wrong." Jace shook his head gently. "Captain, if I refuse, they'll push harder. They believe they act for the sake of order. They don't consider the emotional consequences. The prive. Meaning they don't care what this does to the frontier," Althira said. "No," Jace replied. "They only care about removing what they call strategic anomalies." He looked out the window at the shadowed vessel. "I am one of those anomalies." A moment later, the dark ship sent another message. "Transfer required. Failure to comply may destabilize local order." The threats were polite, but clear. The factions murmured in anger. "That is unacceptable. They presume too much. They cannot take living beings like cargo." Jace held up a hand. "Please, all of you, let me speak." The factions silenced again. Jace stepped closer to the display, his posture steady, his voice calm but deep with sincerity. "You have all feared me," he said. "You believed the stories. You believed I could change everything with a single idea. But that fear gave power to a myth that was never true." He paused. "I am not a threat. I am not a legend. I am not a weapon. I am a human who made a difficult choice once, and has been misunderstood ever since." The Zyran commander listened intently. Jace continued. "These people," he nodded toward the dark vessel, "want to study me because they cannot predict human creativity. They want to control something they don't understand." He looked directly into the holographic ring. "But do you know the truth? The very reason humans are unpredictable is because we choose empathy. We choose hope. We choose possibility. We take risks not to gain power, but to prevent harm." Soft murmurs filled the comm network. Althira felt something warm rise in her chest: pride, respect, perhaps both. Jace finished quietly. "If they take me, the frontier will not become safer. It will become more fragile, because fear will have won." The representative of the Asterion Bureau leaned forward. "Then what do you suggest?" "Human," Jace took a breath. "We stand together." The factions reacted in surprise. "Together?" One repeated. Yes, Jace said. You all came here afraid of me. But now you see what real fear looks like. Something that removes freedom, creativity, and choice. He gestured toward the dark ship. Stand with me, and I will stand with you. For a long moment, the factions hesitated. They had never united before. Too many differences, too many disagreements, but slowly, one by one, their ships altered formation, protective, unified, facing outward toward the threat. The bridge crew watched in astonishment. The communicator officers confirmed, Captain, all factions are forming a defensive ring around us and Jace. Althira turned to Jace. You did this. He shook his head gently. We did this. Together. The dark vessel sent a final message, colder than before. You are protecting a dangerous variable. This will not end well. Before anyone could respond, it powered up an energy field. Not a weapon, more like a containment net. The factions reacted instantly, shields rising in perfect coordination. The net hit their combined barrier and dispersed harmlessly into particles of light. The messenger vessel chimed approvingly. Unity. That is something they cannot predict. The dark ship hovered for a long, tense moment, then, slowly, silently, retreated into the depths of space. No battle, no clash. Just the quiet retreat of something that realized it no longer held power here. As soon as it vanished, the tension in the bridge dissolved into relieved breaths. The factions lowered their shields, though they remained connected through the holographic network. The Zyran commander spoke first. Human, you have complicated our lives again. Jace smiled. I apologize. The commander lifted his chin. Do not apologize. Complexity is not always danger. Today, it became strength. Quote in the NR. Quote in the NR is with cross to bases. Another diplomat nodded. We saw what humans can be when they choose courage. Althira glanced at Jace with a warm, proud expression. And what they inspire in others. Jace looked thoughtful. Maybe that's what it truly means to be emberless. Not a destroyer. Not a legend. But someone who lights the way without burning anything. The factions considered this quietly. Finally, the Cernak scout said, Perhaps the frontier is safer with you here, Jace Rowan. Finally, Frontier. Finally, 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 Jace chuckled softly. I hope so. The communication ring dissolved as each faction returned to their ships, leaving the Orlan trace floating peacefully in the silent stars. Althira approached him. You changed everything today. He nodded. Humans do that sometimes. Will the dark vessel return? She asked. Maybe, he replied. But next time, the frontier will not face them in fear. Althira smiled. And you? What will you do now? Jace looked out the window, the stars reflecting in his eyes. I think, he said softly, I'll stay a while. There's still much to learn, and much to help with. The stars glowed quietly around them. The legend of the Emberless One would change from this day on, no longer whispered in terror, now whispered in respect and hope. A human stood at the center of it all, and for the first time, the frontier realized that was enough.